Hi, folks. Thanks for joining. We're going to give a minute here for others to dial in, and then we'll kick off. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here as folks continue to dial in. So good morning, good evening, and or good morning, depending on where you might be in the world today. My name is Sophia Arend, and I'm the Global Blockchain Business Council's Director of Communications. So it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the GBBC Virtual Members Forum. This is a bi-weekly webinar we host showcasing the innovative work of our members around the world. And today we are joined by Jude, founder and CEO of the Charles Winnsboro Group, which is an advisory firm focused on infrastructure development in sub-Saharan Africa. We'll learn more about them today, and the company's main areas of expertise are higher education, workforce development, and capital markets. Today, Jude is going to be presenting on Charles Winnsboro Group's partnership with 2 universities to provide career-focused opportunities to working professionals in Nigeria and other sub-Saharan countries in Africa. He's also going to discuss how blockchain is being utilized. So just briefly before we begin, I'd like to introduce Jude. As I mentioned, he is the CEO and founder of the Charles Winnsboro Group. He also serves as senior counsel at Sterlington, a virtual law firm specializing in high-end transactional and litigation work. Before forming the Charles Winnsboro Group, Jude served in senior legal and business roles with a higher education management company. He joined the company first as general counsel and spearheaded over a $300 million in follow-on investments by private equity firms. Prior to going in-house, Jude practiced corporate law with law firms in New York and Washington, D.C. He began his legal career with Sullivan and Cromwell after graduating from Georgetown University with a combined JD MBA. Jude also has an LLB from the University of Nigeria. So Jude is passionate about workforce development and lifelong learning. He has been a Green Belt certificate in Lean Sigma 6 and certified in blockchain strategy from Oxford University. His particular interest is in exploring how blockchain and other emerging technologies such as AI can democratize access to quality education, healthcare, and financial services. We're so pleased to have Jude here with us today. So if you have questions at any point during his presentation, we encourage you to enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll take them afterwards. Thanks so much, Jude, for joining us, and I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. It's a pleasure to be here with the GBBC. I'm just so impressed by all the work the organization is doing in this space, as well as the platform that it affords its members to speak about the very different and unique things that they're all doing, again, in the blockchain/crypto space. And I'm honored that you asked me to come and speak about what my company is doing. So I think you gave already a very good overview of the company and in my bio. So I think without further ado, let's just kind of get into the presentation, which again is about how Charles Winnsboro is leveraging blockchain to upskill Africa's working professionals. And as you'll see when we get into the presentation, these programs are not restricted to working professionals in Africa. That's a constant question that we've been getting ever since we launched the program, the marketing for the programs in middle of October. No, the programs are available to all from wherever in the world they happen to be. It's just that in a number of ways, as you'll see, they have been designed to address specifically some of the concerns or impediments to employment for Africa's working professionals. So it's these programs are very inclusive. All right, so in terms of the presentation, let me start out. Let me just kind of give you an overview of how I intend for the presentation to proceed. We'll start out with the problem. We'll spend a few slides on that. Then we'll talk about the opportunity as well as the solution. And then we will talk about why blockchain and how blockchain, as in what ways is are we leveraging blockchain to advance this solution in terms of the educational programs that Charles Winnsboro has partnered with universities to produce. And then we'll talk about next steps, where we intend to go as a company beyond these discrete programs. And then we'll end up with more information and, of course, questions. All right, so the problem. Every year, the United Nations puts out a report on the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. And they look at any number of factors. I think there are 17 or 18 SDG goals, having to do with poverty alleviation, other things. I focused on these three because they're the ones that are most directly addressed by the programs that Charles Winnsboro is working on. But if you take Nigeria as a test case or as an example, Nigeria, out of 165 countries that were ranked, Nigeria is 160th, fifth from the bottom, in terms of its attainment of the UN SDGs. And the slide shows you exactly why that is, at least with respect to these particular SDGs. So let's take SDG 4, which has to do with quality education. And they note that, I used red because in the SDG nomenclature, red signifies major challenges remain. And in all of these areas, Nigeria is not just red, but flashing red. They note, for example, that enrollment rates in schools are down. Completion rates are down. And literacy rates are worsening as it pertains to quality education. One thing that they also note is that Nigeria has the worst or the highest number, I should say, of students who are of school age that are out of school. I think last reports from 2018 or so say about 10.5 school-age children, 10.5 million school-age children were not in school. And so not only is it an acute problem, but it's a growing problem because, of course, the pipeline is such that if they are not enrolled in pre-K, kindergarten, primary school, that problem will continue to persist throughout. And so there is a huge, huge problem with respect to SDG 4. What about SDG 8, which has to do with decent work and economic growth? Well, some of this is obviously affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, but negative economic growth, the Nigerian economy shrank by approximately 7%. I think the figure is negative 6.9%. And unemployment rates, that says unemployment rates down, should say up. The unemployment rate is up. Inflation is also up. And so from an SDG 8 perspective, Nigeria is also doing very poorly. What about SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure? Well, one metric that the UN SDGs use to measure the extent to which countries are performing on SDG 9 is the percent of GDP that is spent on research and development. And for Nigeria, it's 0.1%. It's hard to be much lower than that, but that's in fact where Nigeria is. And so across a number of vectors, across a number of factors, Nigeria is just performing very poorly on the SDGs, with the result being, of course, as you see, that it's 160th out of 165 countries. All right, here's a really scary thought. When you consider what I just said on the previous slide, by 2050, Nigeria is going to be the third most populous country in the world, behind only China and India. And so if the country does not get its act together soon, you're going to have what people have said, this is either a population bomb or a population dividend. If it's addressed and concretely, it's a population dividend, no question about it, for reasons that we'll discuss in the coming slides. But if these things are not addressed, then it's going to become a population bomb, because you're going to have a teeming mass of people who have no ability to provide for themselves, to provide for their families, to improve their lot in life. And the consequences of that are just too scary to contemplate. But that is clearly where Nigeria is and what it is looking at if conditions on the ground do not improve. This again shows some scale and some sense of the problem in terms of the underinvestment in education. UNESCO recommends that countries spend approximately 26% of their GDP on education. In Nigeria, it's significantly less than that. It's 6%. And sometimes it's been 1%, 2%, 3%. 6% may in fact be a bit of a high watermark. So this is a significant problem. Here is the result. Well, this is slide 1 of 2. Less than 40% of students gain admission to university because the infrastructure simply is not there, which locks out over 1 million aspiring students each year. And these are not students who don't want to go to school, don't want to go on to university. These are students who very much desire to go on to university, but they simply can't because infrastructure is not there. There's insufficient supply for the number of students who wish to go to university. The consequence is that every year Nigeria spends $1 billion in Ghana on higher education and $500 million in the United States. Now, again, in the case of the United States, that's been somewhat impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, but it gives you a sense of the scale of the problem. Here's something else. Let me skip us really to this. This is the main problem. Africa, and I forget where this data point came from, but Africa needs to build 10 universities each week, with each one enrolling 10,000 students every week for the next 12 years, just to meet the demand for quality education on the continent. And I don't think that there's a person alive who thinks that that's going to happen. And so the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? So that is the situation on the continent in sub-Saharan Africa. And again, I'm using Nigeria as a use case because it's the country, it's my country, I grew up in the country, but you could pretty much say this about just about any other country in sub-Saharan Africa. All right, but here's the flip side of that, which is looking at the Nigerian diaspora. And in the Nigerian diaspora, you find that where the infrastructure exists, from an education standpoint, from a workforce standpoint, Nigerians excel. And so this is from the 2006 US Census. I don't think we have the data, at least I haven't seen it. I looked for it for the 2020 census just yet, but I'm sure it would show a similar trend, and that is Nigerian Americans versus Americans. You can see from a college degree perspective, 61% of Nigerian Americans have a college degree versus 20% of all Americans. As it pertains to advanced degrees, over a quarter of all Nigerian Americans, 29%, have an advanced degree compared with 11% for all Americans. And here's some more information on Nigerian immigrants. This is citing to a number of articles from 2014 and 2018. where it says, this is Amy Chua, the famous Tiger Mom, writing about the relative success of immigrant groups. And she says, the most prominent in terms of immigrants from West Indian and African countries climbing the America's higher education ladder are Nigerians. And she notes that Nigerians make up less than 1% of the Black population in the United States, but are nearly 1/4 of the Black students at Harvard Business School. And she also mentions the data that I just cited in terms of attainment of graduate or professional degrees. And then here's something that was published in Aussie Media in 2018, which talks about, again, Nigerian Americans in terms of their emergence as one of the countries, the US's most successful immigrant communities, with a median household income of $62,351 compared to 57,617 as of 2015. And again, I'm sure if we were to run this data today, we would show a similar trend. So what does this show? Here's some data on the economic power of the Nigerian diaspora, which says, and I was very astonished to see this, that African immigrant spending power exceeds 1 billion in 12 states. And I think most of us have heard, at least anecdotally, about Nigeria and leading Africa with 22 billion annually in remittances. And what's instructive about that is that while there was a slight dip in 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think it fell to about 19 billion rather, is projected to go by 2030, I believe, to 35 billion. And so it's not just a high rate, but it's also increasing substantially. Now, all right, so I'm giving you a lot of background data before we get into the specifics of the program and the ways in which we're leveraging blockchain to facilitate the program, only because I want to give you a sense of the scope of the problem and what drove Charles Winnsboro to say, hey, how can we potentially address this? All right, so here's the opportunity. The opportunity is to really center Africa and its professionals at the heart of the future of work. If there is anything that we have learned post 2019, 2020, it is that talent is globally distributed. Opportunity, however, is not globally distributed. And it is that inefficiency, it is that discordance, that discrepancy that we are looking to try to help solve. And we're under no illusion, by the way, that this is a comprehensive, what we're about to talk about is a comprehensive solution to the problem. But part of this is world building, ecosystem building, and we just figure we'll start working on our little patch of land, and other people will be working on their things as well. And that's how you build out and you figure out the interconnections and the relationships. And that's how you build out an ecosystem that can address this at scale. But here's the opportunity. Here's the flip side. I've mentioned this, I think, many times, even in the context of the UNGA sessions that we had, GBBC had last month. Nigerians are, as it pertains to cryptocurrency, they're #1 per capita. In spite of everything that we just looked at, in spite of all of the economic travails, Nigerians are #1 in usage of cryptocurrency per capita, or maybe that's because of the economic travails that they're #1 in the usage of crypto per capita. And there's been a substantial rise, increase in peer-to-peer trading or dealing in cryptocurrency, occasioned by the Nigerian ban on using bank accounts to facilitate cryptocurrency transactions. We talk about unicorns, and sometimes I think we overemphasize unicorns, but nonetheless, unicorns are being used as a bellwether of how a country is doing. I think there are about 5 or 6 unicorns across all of sub-Saharan Africa, and 3 or 4 of them are based in or have substantial operations in Nigeria. As I mentioned, by 2050, Nigeria is going to be the third largest country in the world. Here's the part where I think that's a good thing potentially, because the median age is actually 18 and trending to 15. My data are correct. And to a person, these folks all seem to be young digital natives. They're very, very proficient, very plugged in. If you spend any time on Twitter or social media, their influence is inescapable. And then the other thing that I'm really jazzed about is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is going to create basically an EU across all of Africa. And it's going to lead to an increase of 6.7 trillion in spending by 2030. I think the data are that it will lift 30 million women out of poverty and will increase regional income by $450 billion. And so there's just a huge, huge opportunity here for working professionals in Africa to retrain, to upskill, and to plug into some of these economic opportunities facilitated by remote work. All right, so that brings me then to the solution. And as I've said, it's not a comprehensive solution. It's part of the solution. But we have launched programs in partnership with two universities, Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Campbellsville University in Campbellsville, Kentucky. Again, these programs are for everyone. And they were designed with the objective of upskilling and reskilling Africa's working professionals. The intention is to prepare them to plug into remote and local working opportunities. And that's why, for example, with the data privacy program, we start with an overview of pertinent laws and regulations in Africa. Okay, so just very quick details on the program, because I do want to get into the blockchain aspect of it. For data privacy and cybersecurity, it's an 8-week program. It's a general program. It's not just for lawyers, notwithstanding that it's being done under the aegis of the Southern University Law Center. It runs for 8 weeks, and there's a capstone project which requires you to describe how you're going to manage a data breach with global implications. And you can do so from a variety of perspectives. As a C-suite executive, as a lawyer, as a compliance person, as the IT professional tasked with the actual remediation of it. And you can also see how, notwithstanding that you might be the subject matter expert in one area, whether that's compliance or IT or the C-suite executive, you're going to be required to interface in a collaborative manner with the other experts in order to successfully manage and respond to this data breach. The program starts January 17th, 2022, and the cost is $9.95. Now, and you can see there the link to the Southern University website describing the program in more detail. We've kept it under 1,000 deliberately so that we can make this program more available to more people. A comparable program would probably be in the range of $2,500 to $3,000. We have worked very hard with our partners to drive this price point down. For Campbellsville University, we have two programs, one in project management and another one in information systems. Again, the modality is very similar to what I just described with Southern University. These are both 8-week programs. The unique thing about this one is that you can pursue it on a standalone basis, or you can kind of think of it as a micro-credential, building up academic credit towards one of CU's graduate programs. And they have graduate programs like an MBA or like a Master's in Information Technology and Management, which I highly encourage people to look at it. It combines a master's in IT with an MBA and has been deployed very effectively in countries like China and India. So you see there the link to the program. One second. So, why blockchain? We use blockchain to verify the student's credentials because academic certificate fraud costs about $600 billion each year, and there is a high incidence. I've got to be candid here. There's a high incidence of credential fraud in Africa, and that really runs the gamut from unlicensed schools operating in Africa, purporting to be licensed and providing very shoddy, education, taking the money and run. So diploma mills, to people, going and forging credentials, forging certificates and saying that they have credentials that they do not have. And the consequence of all of that is to make potential employers located outside of Africa very hesitant to hire people based in Africa because they have no idea what they're getting because of the incidence of fraud. And so that fraud imposes, if you will, a negative externality on good people who are working in good conscience, who are hardworking, who are diligent, who are smart, and just want to avail themselves of some of these remote opportunities. So that's the reason for leveraging blockchain. And the good thing about it is that we're not inventing the wheel here. Blockchain has been used for credential verification in a number of instances. The University of Nicosia, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Cyprus, around 2015, 2016, if memory serves, was one of the first universities out the box to say, we're going to put all of our student records and credentials on a blockchain, so that, again, you have an immutable ledger and the person on the receiving end can trust that the credential has in fact been obtained. One of the things that I had not realized until very recently, but was very elated to see, was that Kenya, I think it's Strathmore University in Kenya, which is a highly reputable, highly prestigious university in Kenya, is using IBM blockchain in a limited way. I think they ran a test pilot. Was trying to find some information as to whether they've scaled. I haven't been able to find that out yet, but they are using IBM blockchain, again, for verification of student credentials. And something that was announced recently is IOHK, which is the nonprofit arm of Cardano, ADA, has partnered with the Ethiopian government to implement a blockchain-based student identification and credential system that is intended to cover up to 5 million students. That's just a momentous undertaking and a very laudable one. And so you can see that the conditions on the ground are really that we are getting to the point where this is no longer something that sounds like science fiction. It is actually being done. What is different about what we intend to do? The candid answer is, in the short term, nothing. We intend to, as we said, just as we showed in some of the other use cases, program credentials will be on the blockchain. And right now we're in the process of speaking to vendors and soliciting bids for the work. I talked to a couple at earlier this year at ASU GSV, which is one of the premier EdTech conferences out in San Diego, spoke to a couple of companies. We're continuing the conversations, and I've been reached out to subsequently by a few other companies. And so we're vetting all of this. This solution will be in place by the time the program launches in mid-January. I'm anticipating by mid-December, if not earlier, we'll have the solution and we'll be able to report out on what the solution is. We want to empower students to give them control over the data. Frankly, blockchain, it can be used, blockchain technology can be used, despite the fact that it's meant to be decentralized, can be used in kind of a centralized way, where it's the institution that controls the data. Here, and again, consistent with the ethos of blockchain itself, we want to empower students to give them control over their data. I know how much time and effort it took me to get my credentials from Nigeria verified when I was looking to apply to law schools and business schools here in the US. We want to facilitate that, make that virtually instantaneous, and lower, or if not eliminate altogether, the sort of friction associated with getting the data from Nigeria or other places in sub-Saharan Africa to the institutions and the employers located outside of the continent. Over time, however, and what I'm really excited about is that it won't just be the program credentials, the discrete program credentials that will be on the blockchain. We intend for all of the students' qualifications to be on the blockchain, both with respect to academic attainment as well as professional accomplishment. And so sort of think of it as LinkedIn on the blockchain, except you won't see a whole lot of and I don't mean to bash LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn, but there's a fair amount of puffery and exaggeration on the site, as is true with all social media sites, quite frankly. In this case, we will have the data on there with respect to all of the students or the workers' accomplishments. And you'll know by the fact that it's on the blockchain, that it's legit. And so that's what we aspire to. Sorry, went the opposite direction. I'm going to just talk briefly about next steps in terms of the multiversity. Ultimately, and I was going to make a joke about comics and the multiverse, but I think I'll skip that. What we intend to have is we are broadening our base of partner schools and programs. We intend to have, when mature, we intend to have something like 10 to 15 schools in our network. And the intent is that we will have these modular programs, these micro-credentials, all of which can be packaged together in sort of a bespoke degree or credential attainment. So you might take course A from University 1, you might take course B from University 2, and so on and so forth, and you package that together into your own kind of bespoke program and certification that is very much attuned to what you want to do, but also to what employers are looking for. And so that is a ways off, but that is what we're looking to do. And so why don't I just, at this point, feel like I've been talking forever, pause and take questions.
Thanks so much, Jude. Really insightful and informative presentation. So we have received a few questions, and I'll pick out a few here in the interest of time. So one question asks, what kind of jobs do program participants achieve or seek? What kind of positions are you hoping that folks will be able to?
It's a great question. Yeah. It's a great question. So let's talk about data privacy and cybersecurity. So data privacy and cybersecurity in sub-Saharan, I mean, it's just a high growth industry. Estimates are that it will grow from about 18 billion or so as of 2020 to something like 27, 28 billion in the next few years. And that's just in sub-Saharan Africa. So I would anticipate that there will be a need for compliance personnel who are trained in cybersecurity. I estimate that there will be a demand for lawyers who have a background in cybersecurity and associated certifications. I estimate that we're confident that there will be a need for, as I've said, IT professionals who are conversant and know how to remediate data breaches. Crypto scams, for example, unfortunately are a growth industry in that part of the world. And again, as multinationals begin to leverage some of these economic opportunities that they see on the horizon in sub-Saharan Africa, it will be very important for, they will present opportunities for people who have geographic, who understand the continent, understand the countries, understand how to work in that environment, but also have these skills. And then I think for, so that's the data privacy program. And then for the Campbellsville programs, dealing with project management, information systems, very much the same kind of thing, where project management is a very highly sought after skill, for example.
Thanks for that. I hope that answered your question. Someone else asks, Yvonne asks, how can students keep control of their academic data? Is it stored on the public blockchain? Maybe you can speak to the blockchain you're using. And then also, are the credentials entered by the university? Sort of like what I think what they're trying to ask is, what's the user experience once your credentials have been entered on the blockchain?
Yeah, no, great question. So once the credentials have been entered into the blockchain, that's your data, right? And so we would basically make it possible for you to, through an app or some other mechanism, be able to toggle on and off permissions. I want thus and such university to have access to my data, and you would just simply flick that on. So the data at the end of the day will not belong to the institution. The institution will be a partner in the network that will just sort of upload or verify that this data is correct, but you control, the queries to the blockchain to say, okay, give thus and such my data, give employer X my data, give university Y my data. That's the way we intend for it to work.
Thank you. Last two questions here, and I think this is a good one. So, what sort of stakeholder involvement does the project need? Do you need government involvement? Do you need different, who needs to be on board for this to work in this sort of initial instance, and then also for the project to eventually scale far beyond that?
That's a great question, and one that I have pondered quite a bit. Originally, what I had intended was that we would approach governments and speak to them about this and have them roll something out on a nationwide basis. And I just think that for a variety of factors, that's just such a convoluted, time-consuming path. So I figured, let's just let's just figure out what the thin end of the wedge is, and let's just sort of force our way into the discussion. And the way to do that is to do this at a very small scale with willing partners. And so we have the universities. We're going B2C as opposed to B2B. We're going direct to the consumer. We believe that this is something that the consumer wants and needs. And as we gather traction, then we can think about how we scale and the ways in which we interface with the governments. But my problem is, if we wait, we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We've got to start somewhere and work our way up. So that's sort of entrepreneurship 101. And so that's what we're doing.
That makes perfect sense. To end here on a high note, and I think you've talked about scaling, you've talked about next steps, and more so your vision. What's next for the project, and what's next for Charles Winnsboro Group? I know you have a number of focuses and a number of projects and use cases active right now. So please.
Thank you. Well, sometimes I think we're trying to take on too much, but there are so many things that we believe we can do in this space. And so, as I've said, we're working our way up from these discrete programs to the concept of the multiversity. We're also trying to, I have a huge affinity for the local universities on the ground in Africa. I went to one. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Nigeria. And yet we know that over the past 20, 30 years, since many of us left to come over to the States or go to Europe, that architecture, that infrastructure that really gave us the launching pad to accomplish something of significance in our careers has just decayed. So I don't want to supplant the local universities. I want to help them. And so the short term is to provide alternative pathways to jobs for working professionals in sub-Saharan Africa. Ultimately, we intend to bring that focus to bear on upping the game of the local universities by getting into research collaborations with the universities in our network, by frankly establishing a venture capital arm that will, if you will, get a right of first refusal with respect to commercialization of R&D. We talked about how little Nigeria is doing in terms of R&D. Well, if the public sector won't do it, the private sector certainly should. And so we're thinking about things like that. And then something I'm really excited about, and I look forward to speaking with GBBC at some point in the future, is Charles Winnsboro is working on a remittance solution that is paired with a pooled investment vehicle to invest in entrepreneurs of African descent. And so the way it would work is we would leverage blockchain technology to reduce the cost of remitting money back to sub-Saharan Africa. And we take some of those savings. Some of the savings would, of course, be returned to the remitter and the remittee. But some of those savings would then be plowed into a side or parallel pooled investment vehicle. And so every time you remit, you kind of get, a token or a fraction of a token that gives you ownership in this pooled investment vehicle. And that pooled investment vehicle then takes that money in equity and then can leverage debt to, upsize the amount that we have in terms of assets under management. And then we make investments in underserved founders. So that's probably a little ways off. Once I get this initiative up to scale, then I'm going to focus on that. But that's near and dear to my heart.
That's the next GBC Virtual Members Forum with Charles Winnsboro, I think.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Jude, thanks so much for taking the time to join us, for answering questions and for presenting on this use case. We look forward to tracking the progress on the project and sharing more with GBBC's community and members. And to everyone who joined us today, thank you for your insightful questions. If we didn't get to your question, we will provide contact information for the Charles Winnsboro Group so you can reach out, and resources to learn more about the project in general. So thanks again, Jude. Looking forward to hearing more about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.